Hello and welcome to our live discussion on the rise in anti-Asian racism in Montreal. I'm video journalist and host of Local 514, Savannah Craig, and I'm joined by Julie and Sarah from the Support Against Racism Against Asians in Quebec. Hi, Sarah and Julie, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having us here tonight.
So thank you for joining this discussion. Can you tell us a little bit of the mission of your organization?
So the mission of GECREAQ is mainly it started off as being a toolbox for Asian descent the Asian community as a whole to find resources in order to help report incidents, but also to get some support, some psychological support related to those incidents. It was meant to be a toolbox at the beginning, but we all can see that we have become way more than just a toolbox. We're now, I guess you could call it some kind of even a pressure group. Yeah, we're pretty proud of how it evolved.
Could you tell me a little bit about your role in these organizations, maybe day-to-day things that you're in charge of?
So I am in charge of everything legal. I have a bachelor's in political science from Concordia. I did translation as well, so sometimes I do that aspect. But I also have a degree in law, and I am currently a graduate student in labor law. So this, I I hope I'm well equipped there to treat all of these matters, just to make sure that every time that we're getting a report or a call out on the group, that we're not liable, or that everything is done according to just legislation, and that the person that is calling out whatever that it is not getting in trouble also. Other than that, everything administrative. We review every single post that everyone sends us every single day. We're three admins, and that's what we do. We read everything, we evaluate everything. We get in touch with people just to make sure that sometimes they post, and we understand that sometimes this is done under the the at the moment. Sometimes they can feel the emotions, and we're just making sure that they don't do anything that they might regret. They might not put something publicly that they might regret. So we contact them, and then Julie and Anne are playing very special roles too when it comes to support. So I'll let Julie complete for me.
Thank you, Sarah. So just to let people to know, I have a background in social work. Right now, I'm a graduate student at the University of Ottawa in social work. And Anne, she's doing her research in sexology at UQAM, so Université du Québec à Montréal. So her background is really an intervention background. So we're here to make sure that when people, they're doing testimonies, they have all the resources after, because we all know that there's a lot of emotional pressure that's happening after doing testimonies, and we want to make sure that the person feels good. She has all the community resources that she needs. So our role is really to give all the references for the community resources, but Asian friendly. As we know that for the Asian communities, we have different situation that is hard to talk about our reality. So that's our main role. And also we're doing a lot of collaboration with other organizations to talk about anti-Asian racism. So I feel that our team is really a good complete team, and we all have different background. I think Sarah, she didn't say at the beginning, but for me, I'm a second generation from immigrants' parents. I have a Vietnamese background, and Anne-Claudie Beaulieu, she's a Chinese descendant adoptee, and so for her family is a white family, and so for sure the way she's gonna deal anti-Asian racism is gonna be totally different from mine, and I will let Sarah to explain what is her reality.
I'm mixed, so I'm half Vietnamese and half French Canadian, and this is why Julia has mentioned that this team, we complete each other, and a lot of people will then relate to each of our different stories, or just you relate to what we're going through. So we're trying to be inclusive in that way, but obviously to think of the broader public.
Thank you both so much for explaining that. And when was this group established?
Actually, a year ago, yesterday, we just celebrated our first anniversary. So the group started, like I said before, as a toolbox. It was created by Laura Liu, and so she because she's a mother, and her view was more for her the future generations, for her child, and that's what motivated her to create the group. Since then, the administrative team has evolved, and we've seen people come and people go, to end up with the team that we have today, which so far so good. Everything is going really well, and we're hoping that the population, well, the community is satisfied with what we do on a daily.
Thank you so much. So hate crimes and violence towards Asians in Canada have increased since the start of the pandemic. In Montreal, police say hate crimes towards the Asian community have increased by at least 5 times over the last year. The Support Against Racism Against Asians in Quebec organized a vigil on Sunday, March the 21st, to remember the victims of the shooting in Atlanta, where 8 people, including 6 Asian American women, were murdered, and at three different massage parlors in Atlanta, Georgia, on March 16th. Could you tell me a little bit about why you organized this vigil and what happened for people who didn't attend?
So we did not organize the vigil. There were. I know it's a bit confusing, but there were 2 separate events, and the vigil was organized by Stella, which is an organism that advocates for the sex workers. We, on the other hand, we organized the march. So we started on Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday morning. So Wednesday morning, we received an email from Mei Chu, who is she's responsible for another group. So it's the Progressive Chinese Quebecer, and she was reaching out to all the leaders of the Asian community to try to organize a march of sorts. We weren't sure back then what we were doing. It took form pretty quickly. That's what I'll say. So in the span of a few days, we're able to put together a whole group of volunteer, a route, all the police escort, everything that has to do with all the logistics we're taking care of. The role of GECREAQ was to organize the online aspect, which ended up being quite large because so we wanted to be inclusive, and we wanted also to be innovative, and considering our community, which a lot of people will live in multi-generational families, there's a lot of, I'd say, risks that comes with having your elders live with you. So we wanted to make sure that people could enjoy or could participate in the protest, even if they couldn't get out. There's that, and then there's also the aspect of the mentality. A lot of parents aren't just disagree with their children taking part in that sort of thing, that sort of demonstration, which is okay, it's fair. So we wanted to make sure that these people got included in the march. So we I, with my phone, and with the help of the girls there, we had a selfie stick and a phone, and we filmed the whole thing and live streamed it so that the people that couldn't be there could assist in a way. We encouraged people to share whatever they wanted to share on the live. If they wanted to write a a speech. It could have been something they went through, so that they felt included. We also had a post that they could post their homemade posters, so that they could feel like they were part of the march. So we called it a virtual march, and you know what? We're pretty proud of it, and it caught on because we're hearing that all over the country, people were holding virtual marches. Well, not just virtual, but I'd say hybrid marches. So we heard Toronto was having something, Calgary, Vancouver. So it's very flattering, but we're happy that it caught on like this, because at the end of the day, it's about inclusivity.
And it must be difficult too to kind of adjust to, generating a community during the pandemic and with the issues and moving online, but it seems like you guys are doing a really great job at that. So I'm glad to hear.
Well, during the pandemic, that's what actually sparked the need for that type of of a group of platform, because since people were confined, people were staying inside, and all of the first few aggressions that we saw, the first few I'd say the violent aggressions that happened were online. It was online bullying. It was just people just writing and or dissing people from the Asian community. So it made sense that the platform was just put together, so that we would have our voice too, and a way to cope with what was going on, because everyone was inside, everyone was confined. That was the only way to reach out. We're young here, the administrators, but and so we thought, what, let's make lemonade out of those lemons. We're going to use everything that we can, if this is what the future is, and that's how we can reach people, then that's how we can reach people. We're not going to go around neighborhoods handing flyers. This is not what the context requires. So I think that it was a natural thing because of the pandemic that this came along. I don't know if Julie has anything to add, but that's how I see it.
Mhm. And I will add that today we feel that we're more like a grassroots advocacy organization. We're not official yet. However, we do a lot of advocacy work, as we're gonna talk with politicians, we're gonna do some recommendation, and we're gonna write open letters, for example. And we feel that at first, yes, it was like Sarah said, a toolbox to Asian communities to go there and having the tools what to know what to do if they have been through discrimination, something like that. But now we feel that it's more a place who people they're gonna go along. Yes, they're gonna give some testimonies, but we do receive some emails that people wants to volunteer for the cause and they wants to do something. And we do have younger generations too who write to us and asking if they can do some volunteer work to help us for the cause to fight against anti-Asian racism. And we also have some allies who are going to contact us to ask if they can do something. So we feel that, yes, at first it was a platform to get together, but now it becomes like we're like in the next level to really advocate our voices. We feel that the communities, they have somewhere they can talk and they can express themselves, and the first time they feel heard by the society.
Thank you both. In terms of volunteering, what does this kind of look like?
24 hours 7. We're doing volunteer work like daily basis. I think Sarah, she can really talk how she's doing it because we are full-time student, full-time job, and we have email, we have interviews. It's really crazy our daily living right now.
Very little sleep. And we cut down on our personal life a lot. This is what people don't necessarily realize. But because we do, and we're graduate students, so we take this seriously. This is our names, also our careers, our personal careers that are linked to this. So we don't want to, everything that we post, we stand by it, and everything that we let people post, you know, we have a plan, and it's calculated. Obviously, this takes a lot of time. So I can't just say, it's a 9 to 5 thing. It's every day, every single day, 7 days a week, and we do meetings. We have our little meetings together just to plan and to strategize. It's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work. We although we have to deal with this ourselves, we do encourage the community just to report if they see something out of norm. So if they see a comment that seems to be a little bit abusive, obviously, in order to ensure or to promote a safer space, we do ask the community to report, and so in this way they can play their part into this volunteering.
Are you both hoping that this organization will continue to grow and maybe bring more people on to your staff? I don't know if staff is the right word because I know you guys are volunteering. But.
Well, the main idea is for our group to become an organization. I know that we're loosely using the term here, but we're not a nonprofit. We're just a Facebook group, and although we take this seriously and we provide all the tools and the services that a proper nonprofit would, we the ultimate goal, I think, and I think Julie agrees with me that the ultimate goal is to become our own entity, to be but for right now we're starting to be taken seriously, which is nice, because we're not just people would call us what we are really is an advocacy group. People say that we're influencers, or we have influence, but I don't think that they quite understand what how far this goes. So yeah, the end goal is to become registered and to become our own thing. Whether or not I'll still be there then, or if Julie will be there, it's as long as the cause is progressing, and that the group still provides what we are providing to the community. I'll be satisfied with that.
Mhm. And I think our goal is really to make sure that the community has somewhere like a tangible place that they can go if something really happens, because we can't stay online, because staying online is mean, like, for example, the reality that we have is not really true, as if there's like a tangible organizations, a physical organization who actually gives services and gets subventions by the government. It really shows that the needs is there. So our goal for sure is to have to create this organization, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of administration times, but we feel that by creating it, it's going to really give a succession for the future generation, as Laura Lou, who she wanted to at first. That's going to help for the future generation. We feel that as all of us gonna become a mom one day, for sure we want to make sure that our kids they don't going through all the same thing that we have been since we are young. So I think that's the one of the main reasons why we're driven for the cause, but for sure for us the fact that we have the proper tools, we can advocate for the cause, and we all have the backgrounds to doing it. We feel that that's why we feel that it's important to be out there, and we get all the things that we need to doing it. So that's why we all volunteer, and usually we're gonna do some collab, but it's not something that we're gonna pressure on doing it. So what we're doing is really small work, like really grassroots, like from the beginning of it.
Thank you so much. And, you know, for people who may not understand this, why might Asian Canadians experiencing hate crimes, why might they prefer to reach out to you guys instead of going to, you know, the SBVM, the police?
Well, I'll start the answer. I'll let Julie complete. But one of the things is that it's not the resources that is out there, the lines to report and while the services are not catered to the community. The community has special needs. You might want to say it like that. There there's to you have to take under consideration that we are that the community has different mentalities and different because of where we're from, or because of where our descendants are from. The police is not necessarily viewed as a friend. So just by understanding that, I think that it's a first step, and we're trying to pressure public officials to understand that, to recognize that there is that you need to cater to these to the different communities in a way that it will make them more comfortable. Just a language barrier is not really being thought of when because I'll just give you an example. For Vietnamese descent, we have different types of dialects, so, and different mentalities depending on where you're from, north or south and such. So, but you know what? This is perfect for Julie because she does social work. So I'll let her complete.
Yeah, so like Sarah said, I think the communities that have a lot of trauma, like historic trauma with any politics or police organization, as in our country, it was not somewhere safe to go through if we have been something, we have hate crimes, for example. So we feel that the fact that we are a Facebook group, people, they feel really empowered to go there and to have the testimony to be out there, but sometimes they don't feel that they need to go through all the justice system, sorry. But for sure that, for example, if someone wants to go and have resources to go through all this system, we're gonna refer the person to go to the Center of Research Action of Race and Religion, so the GECREAQ. That's really important because we want the person to feel safe, how they want to go through the situations. But also, I feel that a lot of people's, especially second generations, seeing how the police, they're gonna act toward the older communities, for example, Black communities, Indigenous, and Muslims. So seeing how they do the race profiling and how they're gonna act towards them, for sure it shows that maybe it's hard to trust, maybe, as how they act towards them. So maybe they can act the same thing toward us, and it's the same thing for people who has sexual assault or domestic violence. It's really hard to go to the police stations and talk, to do all the denunciations and writing down all what's the fact that's happening. It's really hard. So for sure, for my part, I'm questioning the way they work with the victims, how the victim have the real power to do all the denunciation, And that's why one of our recommendations was to take the founding of, for example, this PVM and giving back to the community organization who actually works with the victim of hate crimes or Asian communities to help them to go through all the mental health issues and all the difficulties that they need actually to be helped. So it was one of the recommendations as how we gonna criticize what's happening to the society right now, especially in Quebec.
Thank you both so much. I guess I wanted to move towards talking about responses from politicians. So following the shooting in Atlanta, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau mentioned the rise of Asian hate crimes, calling it unacceptable and un-Canadian, thanking those who have stood up against the violence and drawn attention to the rise in violence towards the Asian community in Canada. Trudeau said that we need to speak out against racism and stop it. What is your reaction to Trudeau's response and statement?
Well, you, as an alumni in political science from Concordia, I might tell you that the federal government has a different mentality than provincial government. So the federal government advocates for the integration and for multiculturalization of the country. So of course this makes sense, and I would not expect anything less from the federal government than to urge people to denounce and to take actions against that type of violence, because it's unacceptable and it makes sense, and they recognize what it is. However, I mean, we do have a different mentality, I think, in the province. Just the recognition of systemic racism is something that has been talked about and has been debated. And it's different. They have different agendas. They have different voters, and that's definitely something that we have to remember. I mean, it's basic. I think that it's right on. He could take actions, though. I mean, there could be a little bit more resources allocated to the fight against racism. But I'm guessing he's starting. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. I'll be satisfied when I see concrete actions, just not words.
I will also want to add that we did sign a letter to Justin Trudeau with the other Asian organizations from different provinces, for example, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. I don't have all the names by heart, but we did write a letter to pressure that the Canadian government needs to, yes, recognize anti-Asian racism during the Asian Heritage Month, which is happening in May, but not only to celebrate the culture, because it's fine to eating food, dancing on the music, and having all the traditional costumes, whatever. However, we really want to have actions that actually help the communities and really to fight against anti-Asian racism. For example, we did talk at the beginning of our platform. There was a lot of denunciation about the fact that journalism, they're gonna put picture of Asian when they talk about COVID-19, but the subject was not about the Asian communities at all. It was only, for example, the number of deceased people. So the fact that people, they're gonna put this type of picture, it's gonna create the fact the people gonna think it's really Asian people who did create the virus, as we know, and there's Donald Trump who called it Chinese virus. So the fact that the press, they put this kind of picture is gonna really create the people who really believe that it's really a virus from the Asian communities, and it's gonna be create all this discrimination and racism toward our communities right now. So we feel that yes, it's good that the government, the federal government, did the statement. However, they need to do action in short term, like and long terms too, really to help the communities, because statement is nice, but we need some things to make it actually it's going to help the communities.
Thank you both. In terms of more action to support these communities and actually, stop this type of violence, what type of things would you like to see both Trudeau and Premier Francois Legault commit to do?
Well, I think that, we've touched upon this. First of all, well, Justin and Francois, I'm expecting them to step it up. And Julie mentioned it. One of the big thing that has been stigmatizing the community has been the press. And I understand that there is a certain liberty of press, and thank God for that. But and the the right to express yourself in the way, but there's also a role that I think should be looked at from the press. And the press has this big reach, and also they have a big responsibility to educate the population, and that's definitely something that we want to address, because an image is worth 1,000 words, and sometimes people don't even read the articles, so they definitely will be stirred away, or from the main conversation. So that's something that I wish that could be addressed from that perspective. When it comes to provincial, I mean, I've mentioned it. I think that the first step is to sit down and define expectations, and also to listen to the communities. We have been fortunate enough to be invited by Benoit Charette to have a conversation about systemic racism. Well, I mean, we were invited just to have a conversation, and the agenda had been let to us to decide. And it makes me sad that he didn't listen. And I keep hearing reports, or him during interviews, just saying that that the militants are just maybe delusional, or maybe that we don't know what we're talking about when we're talking about systemic racism. And it's I find it's funny for a guy that's had so much privilege to speak in our place, you know so let's have a conversation. I think that's what I'm expecting for both governments, and find solutions, and concrete solutions, and going to the root of the problem, not just giving us band-aids to just patch on the problems. So yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. I know you already touched on this a bit in your last response, but when the Premier says that systemic racism doesn't exist in Quebec, does it make you feel like, in terms of hate crimes and things like this, that you'll have little support from the government, the community will have little support from the government?
Well, government means that it's being voted in, right? So I'm not saying that I'm trying to be optimistic about this, and I'm trying to see that if it's okay. It's not okay, as in it poses problems that he doesn't recognize this, because then that means that he's constantly just patching instead of really curing the problem. But doesn't mean because he is in power now that he will be in power forever. So I'm expecting, if any good can come out of this kind of attitude, I'm expecting the other parties to take notes, and to really reflect on how they can represent this society. Obviously, it doesn't make me happy to hear that they don't recognize it. They are doing some work to try, you know. You have to also take under consideration that you know they're acting so that they don't, um, I guess, so that they please their voters, and you know the CAC's voters are not people that do recognize systemic racism, so it makes sense that they don't. I'm just I just want to urge them to think about the fact that as long as you don't, you're just patching, you're not curing. So food for thought.
Yeah, and I will also add that I think we do have the resilience that to believe it's going to change in the future. We have seen with the other movement, for example, with feminists and domestic violence before, it was not recognized at all by the government, and it has changed because of advocacy work from leaders on the cause. So I think we really believe that in the future it's going to change, but for sure, the fact that right now the government doesn't want to recognize systemic racism, and it's really hard to have a conversation with them. As Sarah said, we have been invited by some leaders to talk about racism, but they don't want to recognize systemic racism. The fact that we don't use the same language, it's really hard to sit down in a at the same table and trying to find solutions, because if we don't speak the same language, it's going to be hard to work together. And the fact that they don't let us to express our reality, which we explain how systemic racism is going to affect our lives, it's really like we're going to fight our goals. For example, the fact that they don't want to name the oppressions that we feel right now, it's like fighting with nothing, and it's like fighting with a ghost that we can name it, and it's really hard to find the solutions to help the communities. So for sure, one of our work is to first the governments recognize all the systemic racism, and then after we can sit down and actually talk, okay, what our community needs, and how you can actually help them. But the fact that you don't want to recognize, for sure you can find the right solution to help the communities, and as Sarah said, it's only bandage right now.
Thank you both. So while Asian hate crimes have increased significantly during the pandemic, racism towards Asian people in our society is not anything new. A part of the Chinese Immigration Act of 1885, a Chinese head tax was imposed on each immigrant entering into Canada. This began as a $50 fee, but it was increased to $500. This continued until 1923. In 1885, all Chinese Canadians were barred from voting in federal elections. This was extended to other Asian communities in 1920. Chinese people and South Asians were only granted the right to vote in 1947 and later to Japanese Canadians in 1949. In 1907, Asian Canadians were targeted amid the bubonic plague. After an outbreak in California, Asian Canadians in BC were targeted and checked for the plague. So these are only a few out of the very many examples in our Canadian history as anti-Asian racism is rising in Canada. So just as I'm listing a few of these, do you feel that Canadian education needs to provide more space for learning about these events such as these?
Yeah, for sure. History is really important to know about it, because if we don't understand the history, for sure we're gonna do the same mistakes over and over again. And we need to understand that yes, the Chinese Exclusion Act is over since around the 1960s. maybe the fact that the laws is over, it doesn't mean the consequences is still not there. And one of the consequences we are living in right now in the pandemic is to feel that we are second citizens. The fact that people, they're going to be tell outside to go back to the country is one of the consequences about the stereotype that Asian people, they're not fully citizens in Canada. We call it the stereotype of the foreigner citizens. Um, so it's one of the consequences of these laws. But we need to understand that even today, there's some laws that participate in anti-Asian racism. For example, the domestic laws that people, they can have they can give a visa for somebody who lives in another country to come here, and they can babysit the children, for example. And usually it's really privileged families, usually white families, who can do that. And most of the domestic workers, they are Filipina, who, so they are mothers who gonna come here, they're gonna work and make sure they have money to send it back to their home country. So the family, they can pay the education and having something to eat. But the fact that there's no legislation who's going to help the workers, for example, if she have any abuse in the workplace, I'm for sure it's going to participate. Some people, they're going to call it a modern slave work from today. So for sure, like in the history, we did have some laws that was discrimination towards the Asian communities, but still even today, there's laws that or policies that does exist, and it's gonna give a lot of hard situation for the communities. I know right now we're talking more about the work field. I don't know if Sarah, she wanna add something, because it's actually her work field right now, right, Sarah?
Yes. So, as a union advisor, it's incredibly hard for people in my field to navigate the legislation. So just imagine someone that is new, that is afraid, and they're in a foreign country. So it's definitely, I mean, we say it's accessible, but is it really? Because of the language barriers and all the intricacies. Like sometimes I would tell people about certain things, and we even as professionals disagree about certain meanings, or the meanings of certain words and a definition. So imagine someone that is new and that is just trying to keep their heads above water. So yeah, there's definitely a lack of accessibility when it comes to that, and that's just one aspect.
Thank you both. So in San Francisco, a group has formed to patrol Chinatown, providing support to the community and protection from anti-Asian racism. What are your thoughts on this, and should Montreal and Canada fund groups like this?
I don't know if you were aware, but there is such an initiative here in Montreal. There is a group that I'm not quite sure of all of the way that it works, but there is a group that collaborates with the police and patrols Chinatown. I don't think that it's a bad thing. I'm just questioning a bit of, is it for everyone? Is it answering all of the challenges that these merchants are facing? I think I'll just leave it at that for my part.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like Sarah said, there's some groups of people or citizen people who they gather together, and they have created, I think, a Facebook group to help people to patrol if they want to do the groceries shopping, or they need to go, I don't know, to go to work, and they are afraid that they might be harassed from outside, as they seen this a Korean guy who got pepper sprayed, I think 2 weeks ago. and nobody helped him. I think that there's a lot of fear that's happening in the communities, and people they gather together to make sure that all there's a safe situation they can do to actually help the community. So it does exist. Maybe it should be something that the city should found to create this kind of program, because I'm pretty sure it's not only Asian communities who needs it. I'm pretty sure that the other communities might also need this type of services. So we should not to segregate, sorry, only to Asian, but I think any work anti-racism work should be for the all communities. We're not the special ones who need to get all the services, because we all fighting for the same thing, which is systemic racism. So we should create something to help all the communities for the different challenges they're going through. So yeah, it does exist, but it's also only volunteer works, and we know that our society should not to be supported by volunteer work, because it's going to create invisible work from people who actually citizens who giving for free, but the government have responsibilities about the challenges that the society have right now, and it's created services and giving the right funding to the right proper organizations to help the communities and all the challenges, the societal challenges right now.
To kind of continue on that note, how would you like to see individuals better support the Asian community here in Montreal?
Well, in terms of support, definitely, I mean, it's basic common sense, but if you see someone being attacked, just don't just stare. Try to do something. We're not inciting people to be violent, but try to do whatever you can to help. I mean, sometimes it can be scary to be in that situation. I mean, we've seen so many attacks in common transport, and just to have someone that feel that steps up and is on your side can do a tremendous difference between being scarred out of this thing, because obviously there are some legal aspects that you have to deal with, but just people stepping up can make a big difference between a person being traumatized and not. So that's the first step, I think. In terms of just supporting in general, I mean, the merchants, just go and support the Asian merchants. That's one thing, because a lot of the businesses have been boycotted during the pandemic, just because of whatever the ex-president Trump has said. And then it's a trend. It's so sad to say that it's a trend that caught on. So do support the businesses, and do something when you see people being attacked in public. Don't be afraid to step up and just try to mediate the situation. Obviously, be careful, but try to just support the person, or just to tell them to stop, keep calm, or I mean, people have been doing that, but I find that maybe sometimes filming is also a good thing to do, because then it ensures that you have proof of the person or the identity of the person, so that the person that is being attacked, that's they're they're paralyzed by fear, right? So it's not necessarily the first reflex to just take out your phone and start filming. So that's something that can help, and then stay by the person, just until that people get there to help, or the police gets there to help. So they're small things. They're seems to me like it's common sense, but just people should think about that, mainly because it makes a difference between being traumatized for life and not. So yeah.
And if people want to go to read what is about anti-Asian racism, they can always go on our website, which is Regroupement Asie Québec, but it's only QC. or if they write GECREAQ on Google research, they're gonna find our website. We have all links that we talk about allyship, what actually people can read, and to know what they can actually do to help the community. So if they want to create any actions, if they want to know more about it, to get more the knowledge, it's important to go read about it and not asking an Asian person to doing it, because it's a lot of emotional labor, and it's really hurtful for the person sometimes to talk about all the trauma they have been through. And if, for example, one of your friends is talking about their own issues, it's really to listen, like to listen and to acknowledging it, not asking, for example, is it true? Or maybe the person might, what the meaning was this, or maybe the person wanted to say this, for example, and we calling those kind of action is gaslighting the person, which is a psychological violence, and it's really dangerous for the person, because after the person is not going to feel safe anymore and they don't want to talk about their own issues, and it's going to be really difficult for the Asian person. So for sure, to go read what is anti-Asian racism, and really to listen the person and asking the person what they want you to help her or him. So there's no any emotional labor that's happening, because we know that it has a lot of impact for the mental health for an Asian person right now.
Thank you so much for taking the time to explain that. And thank you both for joining me today. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share?
Well, thank you, first of all, thank you for taking the time, for the invitation. And, you know, it's getting the message out there that we're just people. I mean, everyone is just equal, right? If you're just being open to that fact, then I think that, you know, you're on the good path. There's nothing comes from just, you know, there's no differences, you know, that comes from just being physically different. We are the same people. I mean, I find racism so absurd, that it's easy for me to say this, but at the same time, you know, it's stop justifying and stop making the jokes. Sometimes people they don't mean to be insensitive, but by making little jokes and, you know, by permitting themselves to just say little tiny jokes, sometimes that hurts. It's the microaggressions that keeps on building, and then at some point, you know, you don't know what's going on in people's lives, and that might be you know, that might push them over the edge, and you don't know, you know, so try to not contribute to that. Also, the whole justifying, you know, that because you have Asian friends that, you know, permits you to say certain things, you know, I would never say that because I have family members who are Afro descendant that I could permit myself to say certain things, you know, that I would never. So why do people do that? It's just, you know, just try to be mindful of that whole dynamic, because it's not necessarily it doesn't have a huge impact, sometimes those tiny things, but you know, it's the accumulation of those tiny things that may have be deep and bad consequences. So that's, yeah.
For my part, I will add that people can follow us in the Groupe d'entraide contre le racisme envers les Asiatiques au Québec. It's a Facebook group, so if you're writing down the Groupe d'entraide Asiatique, you're going to find it anyway. The name is French, but we want to tell that most of our work is really bilingual, because we want to be inclusive and making sure that all Quebecers or people who wants to follow for the cause, they can understand what actually what is on the platform, and we get all the resources. We have a website for sure, and people can come, even though if the person, if you're not the Asian descendant, you can you can follow the group and to be part in the membership. So really to support the cause, and sometimes reading the testimonies might be helpful to understand more what is anti-Asian racism. So we inviting anybody who wants to be part of the movement. And for sure, we want to make sure that it's a safer space for everyone. So there's some rules that it's a contract to make sure that everybody feels safe. And it's important to following it and to make sure that everybody feels safe in this place, because at first it was creating for Asian people, but we do recognize that to fight racism, we need to be the whole society. So that's why we open the groups to everyone. So feel free to join, and you can contact us if you have some questions. You can write to our email. We have an email that you can find on the Facebook groups, and you can contact us, and we're gonna try to respond the fastest as we can, even though we are volunteers, just to make sure that everyone remember that if we don't answer, it's really because we are busy with the work or with our studies. However, we're going to be happy to answer all questions, to give references if anybody have any questions.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Sarah-Lê. Thank you, Julie Tran, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And go give them a follow. All right, good night. Thank you guys for tuning in.